Dubro Suspicion Files.
The year is 1986. Seoul is just buzzing with this frantic, very controlled energy.
It really is. They're gearing up to host the Asian Games, trying to project this image of global stability, of modernity.
But just beneath that, that meticulously polished surface, there's a much darker reality.
A frightening one.
Yeah.
This is a military dictatorship. State power is absolute, and certain people can, well, they can simply cease to exist.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into one of modern South Korea's most enduring mysteries.
And perhaps one of its most potent historical traumas. The disappearance of the actress and model Yoon Young-sil.
She vanished in May of 1986 from her high-security apartment in Apgujeong-dong.
Right in the heart of the new, glamorous Seoul.
And this isn't just a cold case, is it? Yoon Young-sil's disappearance is more than that. It's like a dark and perplexing cipher.
That's a great way to put it. It's a cipher for the socio-political pathologies of the Fifth Republic under General Chun Doo-won.
It's a story where you see all these different threads colliding.
Absolutely. You have Cold War espionage, intense media censorship, and just the arbitrary, brutal exercise of state power by the ANSP.
The Agency for National Security Planning.
The state's enforcers.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to take the fragments we have, verified police records, the historical context, the whole geopolitical atmosphere of the time, and try to rigorously reconstruct what happened.
Because the official conclusion was just way too simple.
Unbelievably simple: suicide by depression.
Mm-hmm.
But we believe the evidence available today flatly contradicts that.
And instead points towards something far more deliberate.
A state-backed erasure.
So we're going to trace the volatile environment she lived in, examine the forensic impossibilities of her vanishing, and ultimately assess the powerful forces, both north and south, that might have made her a target.
Our goal is to find the most probable truth, and to understand why, after almost 40 years, that truth is still locked away.
To really get how she could just disappear so completely, we have to first understand the society she was living in.
A society where the government had the mechanism, the muscle memory, and, the motive for making inconvenient people vanish.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the context of anxiety and erasure that was 1986 South Korea.
To really appreciate the depth of this mystery, you have to first recognize the deep contradiction at the heart of the Chun Doo-won regime in 1986.
It was a year of, you said, almost schizophrenic duality.
It really was. On one hand, you have the international spotlight coming. They are obsessed with outward appearances.
The whole world is about to arrive for the Asian Games.
Exactly. The government was pouring vast resources into projecting this image of a clean, stable, modern, and even, democratic-leaning nation.
They wanted the world to see prosperity.
Not protest. The Asian Games were the crucial dress rehearsal for the 1988 Seoul Olympics. Everything hinged on it.
But the relentless pursuit of that and that sanitized image, it required some terrifying actions at home.
It did. They couldn't have anything that might spoil the party, which is where the infamous social purification campaigns come in.
And what did that mean exactly? Social purification.
It was a bureaucratic horror show, a mechanism for systematic erasure. It was this massive, documented effort to round up anyone deemed an undesirable or a social vagrant.
And that could be anyone.
Anyone. The homeless, political dissidents, critics of the government, even disabled people and beggars. Anyone who didn't fit the pristine image.
And these people weren't just held overnight. They vanished from their lives entirely.
They were sent to internment camps. The most notorious, of course, was the brothers' home in Busan.
I read about that. It was horrific.
Victims were swept off the streets and often subjected to forced labor, starvation, sexual violence. It was a nightmare.
So the key insight here is chilling.
It is. The capacity of the state to disappear individuals was not some occasional act of overzealous police. It was an active, bureaucratic, formalized function of governance.
There was even a legal order for it.
Interior Ministry Order Number 410. It legally authorized police to just remove people from the streets. No judge, no trial.
So when we talk about a high-profile figure like Yoon Young-sil vanishing, we aren't talking about a random kidnapping in a lawless country.
Not at all. We are talking about a state that already had the infrastructure and, maybe more importantly, the psychological conditioning for its law enforcement to carry out extrajudicial removals.
The barrier for erasing a life, regardless of their social status, was just terrifyingly low.
That's the crucial context. The infrastructure for state kidnapping was fully operational. And while they were locking away dissidents, the regime had to keep the rest of the populace distracted.
Compliant.
Exactly. which brings us to the heavily controlled culture of the time.
And this is where Yoon Young-sil's celebrity status becomes so important. The government needed glamour. It was a tool.
A psychological distraction.
Yeah.
Yes, the government leaned heavily on what was known as the 3S policy.
Sports, sex, and screen.
The strategy was explicit. Divert the attention of a populace that was getting more and more agitated by the pro-democracy movement. Divert them away from politics and towards spectacle.
Sports gave them nationalism and excitement.
Sex and scandal kept them gossiping.
And the screen, the entertainment industry, provided the glamour and the escapism they needed.
And Yoon Young-sil, as one of the leading faces of fashion and film, was absolutely critical to projecting the image that the state wanted its citizens to see.
She really was the picture of that new cosmopolitan Gangnam culture.
She was its aspiration.
Yeah.
But that cultural output was so tightly controlled. The regime enforced these draconian reporting guidelines.
The Bodo Jichi.
Yes. And these were not vague suggestions. They were detailed, often daily, mandates issued by the intelligence apparatus.
Dictating what exactly?
The exact tone, the content, even the size of headlines for every single newspaper and broadcaster in the country.
So how did that actually work on a day-to-day level? Was it just a weekly memo or something?
Oh, it was far more pervasive than that. Journalists and editors would get direct instructions, sometimes several times a day, from intelligence agents.
Telling them what to bury.
What to bury, how to frame sensitive news, which public figures were completely off limits. They were told exactly what they could not report on.
Things like student protests, corruption.
Anything that might destabilize the order that was required for the Olympics.
So the absolute silence that later enveloped Yoon's case. A beautiful, high-profile celebrity vanishing without a trace that wasn't just investigative incompetence.
No, it was an active application of this system.
A switch was flipped.
Precisely. If the ANSP or a high-ranking political figure decided that Yoon Young-sil's disappearance was an inconvenient secret because it implicated the state or a powerful individual, then the order to enforce silence would have been instant.
And absolutely.
And enforced through the Bodo Jikim across every single media outlet. The story just ceased to exist.
Okay, so now we understand the stage. This beautiful facade built on top of a terrifying state machine. Let's focus now on Yoon Young-sil herself. You call her a profile in modern vulnerability.
Yoon Young-sil, born in 1956, she really embodied this new modern Korean woman that the 3S policy was designed to promote.
She was independent, glamorous.
She represented that emerging westernized ideal. And she was physically striking, which gave her a huge advantage in the nascent high fashion scene.
She was very tall for the era.
Exceptionally tall. At 174 centimeters, that's around 5 feet, 8.5 inches, she would have stood out immediately.
And that propelled her modeling career, which started in '77.
Yes, and then she quickly moved into film, which just reinforced her status as a cultural icon.
She was in films like Miss Whispers Like Women.
Right, in 1983. So by 1986, she wasn't just a star. She was the face of this cosmopolitan lifestyle, living in the high-status Apgujeong Hyundai apartments in Gangnam.
A symbol of Seoul's rapid and often ruthless development.
But beneath that untouchable glamour, she had this significant private vulnerability, one the police would later weaponize to explain her vanishing.
The relationship with the man named Billy.
Yes, this fragile private life component is absolutely essential for understanding the official narrative. Yoon was involved with a foreign man, Billy.
And he had this amazing backstory.
The perfect backstory. He claimed to be a highly successful, wealthy third-year medical student from Los Angeles and the son of a pastor.
In 1980s Korea, where reputation was everything, a relationship like that for a celebrity, it would have been seen as a huge stabilizing factor.
It was security, status, and international connection. It represented the ultimate prize.
But it was all a lie.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Verified reports later confirmed that Billy's entire identity was fabricated. It was a classic romance scam.
He wasn't wealthy, not a med student.
The family background was fiction. The betrayal must have been just catastrophic, not just emotionally, but, professionally and socially.
In a country that valued honor and appearance so highly.
The reputational damage, the deep sense of shame and humiliation in a society like 1980s Korea, you just can't overstate it. She was a public figure who had been publicly deceived.
And this incident gives the police the one tangible, documented psychological stressor they need.
It aligns perfectly with their later and very convenient theory of suicide due to depression.
But this is where we have to pause and really analyze that jump. We have a motive for depression, sure. But do we have credible evidence for a bodiless, resourceless disappearance?
Absolutely not. The critical analysis is that while the Billy fraud provides a credible motive for profound emotional distress, it does not provide a credible mechanism for what happened next.
Right. Emotionally distraught people rarely organize a perfect, untraceable vanishing act.
An act that leaves behind their passport and their money while they exit a high-security complex without a single witness. It just doesn't add up.
And to complicate all of this, there's the profound geopolitical shadow cast by her family connections.
Specifically, her older sister, Osumi.
Their lives were tied to this huge Cold War drama.
Inextricably. Osumi, who was born 𝐏𝐎𝐃𝐂𝐄𝐓, was the common-law wife of the legendary director Shin Sang-ok.
And she had 2 children with him after his divorce from Choi Looney.
And Shin Sang-ok and Choi Yoon-hee were, of course, the pair abducted by King Jong-il back in 1978.
This is the nexus of danger right here.
It is. By 1986, the entire Yoon family unit was under constant, intense government scrutiny. They were the relatives of a high-profile defector, even if that defection was forced through abduction.
They were living on the razor's edge of the North-South divide.
Their connection to Shin Sang-ok meant they were automatically objects of suspicion for the South Korean intelligence agencies, who were just constantly paranoid about northern infiltration or contact.
So Yoon wasn't just a model who got scammed. She was a major cultural figure living in the most surveilled neighborhood, whose family was directly connected to the most embarrassing high-level spy incident of the decade.
That is a unique and very dangerous level of vulnerability.
It elevated her from a simple actress to a high-value, high-risk individual in the eyes of the ANSP.
Potentially marking her as a liability that needed monitoring, or, worse, neutralizing.
Let's transition now to the core of the mystery. The disappearance itself. The forensic reconstruction of that locked room.
This is where the physical facts of the scene directly contradict the official explanation.
And the first thing we notice is just a fundamental lack of a definitive timeline.
And that in itself is very telling. A proper investigation establishes a precise date of last contact. Here, we just have ambiguity.
Which implies immediate investigative apathy.
It does. Let's walk through those key dates again, focusing on how compressed the timeline was.
Okay, so the catalyst is the defection.
March 13th, 1986.
Yeah.
Shin Sang-ok and Choi Yoon-hee escape their captors in Vienna and seek asylum. This throws the entire intelligence world, north and south, into chaos.
And Yoon Young-sil is seen working after that.
Yes, she's reliably seen conducting professional duties, mainly in the fashion industry, into early May 1986. Then her communication just stops, sometime mid-May.
And the apartment is only discovered when her sister, Osumi, grows concerned.
Yes. Osumi goes to the 𝐏𝐻𝐃𝐂𝐓 apartment because of sudden silence. The police are brought in, and almost immediately, the suicide conclusion is stamped on the file.
And then, just 2 months later, in July 1986, the hammer falls again.
The extrajudicial deportation of Kim Jong-nam. The pressure was intense, sudden, and very, very directed.
Let's focus on the scene at that high-security Hyundai apartment. What did the police actually find that led them to such a swift, bodiless conclusion?
They found a scene of eerie normalcy. The apartment was tidy, no signs of a struggle, no forced locks, no broken windows, no ransacking.
It was, for all intents and purposes, a locked room.
Or at least a non-violent exit. And this is the part that just completely decimates the theories of flight or spontaneous suicide.
Her essential resources were all still there.
That's right. Her clothing, her jewelry, expensive items a celebrity might use to fund a sudden, desperate exit were all present.
But more importantly,
her passport and key identification documents, they were all undisturbed.
And that detail is fatal to the voluntary flight theory.
Completely. To flee Korea and start a new life abroad, especially in 1986, you need a passport. You need money.
Leaving both behind suggests either a very short, planned absence
or an unplanned, forced departure that was facilitated by others.
And let's address the suicide theory based on the geography of Seoul.
If a high-profile person commits suicide in Seoul, particularly by jumping into the Han River, which was the most common method then, the body is, in the vast majority of cases, recovered.
The river currents, the infrastructure.
Bodies almost invariably came to shore or were spotted within days or weeks. For 40 years, there has been no body, no remains, no trace of her whatsoever.
A spontaneous, depressed individual does not typically organize a flawless, untraceable disposal of their own body.
That requires professional organization. It requires a capability and resources far beyond a distressed individual.
So the evidence intact resources, locked door, no body forensically screams extraction and concealment.
Not spontaneous despair.
And let's revisit the impossibility of the silence around her physical exit from the building. This was 𝐏𝐻𝐃𝐂𝐓, one of the most visible, high status, and therefore arguably most surveilled complexes in all of Seoul.
The Hyundai apartment complex was the absolute pinnacle of Gangnam real estate. Densely populated with high-status residents, guards, neighbors who would be highly attuned to movement.
And Yoon Young-sil wasn't just famous, she was physically conspicuous.
At 174 centimeters, yes. For a person of her stature and visibility to exit that building, walk the corridors, use the elevator, and reach the street without a single witness.
Not one neighbor, not a guard, not a passing acquaintance.
It's statistically improbable. It defies the physics of a crowded, high-security environment.
Which leads us back to the strong suggestion of a professional extraction.
The lack of witnesses is the key piece of evidence. If a discreet, organized operation was waiting, maybe a vehicle at a service entrance or in the underground parking, facilitated by someone in uniform or a position of authority, she could have been removed without attracting any attention.
This shifts the focus from a lone individual to a coordinated effort.
A professional one. And the police reaction just cements the idea of a cover-up. They close the case so fast.
Textbook Fifth Republic behavior.
Absolutely. Prematurely settling on suicide due to depression was the perfect administrative solution. It allowed them to halt any resource-intensive manhunt.
Why waste officers and public funds searching for a star who supposedly took her own life out of shame?
And the media blackout was absolute. No public pleas for information, no intense press coverage demanding answers. That's the heavy hand of Bodo Ji-yoon at work.
It is. The police were reluctant to share details, held no briefings, and every single media outlet just stayed compliant.
The absolute failure of the press to pursue a high-profile case like this is arguably the strongest external sign that the story was flagged as sensitive and officially suppressed by the ANSP.
It proves the state had an interest in the case vanishing just as completely as she did.
It does.
Which brings us to the big question. Why would the state protect the story of a missing model? Here's where it gets really interesting as we assess that geopolitical shadow, the North Korean connection.
We have to start with the catalyst. The Vienna escape in March 1986. This is the event that guaranteed the attention of both South Korean and North Korean intelligence agencies would be focused on Yoon's family.
And remind us again of the scale of the humiliation this escape caused Kim Jong-il.
It was immense. Shin Sang-ok and Choi Eun-hee were abducted in 1978 and had served 8 years as Kim Jong-il's prized assets. They were forced to produce films directly for the future leader.
Their defection in Vienna, seeking asylum from the U.S., was a global spectacle.
And an unprecedented diplomatic and psychological humiliation for Pyongyang.
That humiliation is what fuels the retaliation hypothesis.
The idea that North Korean agents decided to hit back by targeting the remaining family members in Seoul.
The rationale makes a certain kind of strategic sense from Pyongyang's perspective.
It does. If Kim Jong-il could no longer control Shin Sang-ok, he might seek leverage or just simple retribution against Shin's next closest family tie in the South.
Which would be Yoon Young-sil, the sister of Oh-sumi, the mother of Shin's children.
Abducting Yoon would be punitive. And it might offer leverage against Shin and Choi, who were now cooperating with U.S. intelligence.
And North Korea had a proven active history of kidnapping foreign nationals for state purposes.
They absolutely did. The seed-bearing program involved abducting people, Japanese citizens, Lebanese women, South Koreans, whose skills or presence were desired in the North.
And given Kim Jong-il's obsession with cinema,
there's the chilling replacement angle. Having lost a beautiful, talented actress in Choi Eun-hee, did he seek a replacement?
And Yoon Young-sil, with her modern, striking aesthetic, would have fit the profile perfectly.
The type of cultural figure Kim Jong-il wanted in his court. It's a plausible, dramatic theory, perfectly aligned with the geopolitical volatility of 1986.
But you argue this theory has a fatal flaw based on precedent.
It does. North Korea is a state that abducts for propaganda and utility. When they take high-profile figures, they eventually display them. They use them to serve the regime's ideological goals.
Shin and Choi were eventually paraded on film.
Japanese abductees were used as language teachers or for cross-border communications.
But Yoon Young-sil has never appeared.
Never. For nearly 4 decades, there has been zero credible intelligence, zero defector testimony, and no propaganda use of Yoon Young-sil.
So if she was abducted, why was she kept entirely silent?
It's a massive deviation from the established North Korean methodology. It suggests that if she was taken by the North, she was either immediately killed upon resistance, or, far more likely, the domestic interpretation is the correct one.
The domestic interpretation being that the South Korean agencies used the North Korean angle as a convenient cover for their own operation.
Precisely. In the pervasive climate of domestic spy hysteria in 1986, the ANSP, operating under extreme paranoia, would view any family connected to the Shin Sang-ok defection as radioactive.
So it's highly plausible that Yoon was detained for interrogation.
Intense, possibly brutal interrogation regarding Shin's escape.
And if the ANSP thought she held some clue, or worse, if they accidentally killed her during a violent interrogation,
then the need for a perfect, untraceable cover-up would supersede all other concerns. The state would have to engineer a narrative that was impossible to challenge.
the suicide due to shame explanation.
And then use their full powers of suppression to make the body vanish and enforce the media silence. This provides a very strong domestic motive for the entire cleanup operation.
That brings us to the strongest evidence, the actual documented state action that points directly toward the domestic Leviathan being responsible.
This is where we stop talking about theories and start analyzing documented state coercion. The extrajudicial deportation of Kim Jong-man is the absolute smoking gun for state involvement.
So who exactly was Kim Jong-man and what happened to him?
Kim Jong-man was Oh Soo-mi's partner at the time. He was a rising star in the avant-garde photography world, and crucially, he held French citizenship or residency.
Giving him an international status the sisters lacked.
Exactly. His proximity to the family made him a witness, a supporter, and a potential liability.
And this incident happened just 2 months after Yoon vanished, in July 1986.
The swiftness is astonishing. ANSP agents, the nation's top intelligence agency, arrested Kim Jong-man without a warrant. No charges, no legal counsel, no trial.
He was simply driven immediately to Gimpo Airport.
Forcibly put on a plane and exiled to the United States, this was a naked, extrajudicial expulsion carried out by the security apparatus of the Fifth Republic.
And the ANSP doesn't waste its resources on random people. They were acting with purpose. So why deport the brother-in-law?
The timing and the extreme measure suggest a coordinated, intentional effort to achieve two goals. First, remove a potential witness.
He was close to the family. He might have had sensitive information.
Either about Yoon's distress or perhaps about threats she had received from a powerful figure. He was an international citizen who might have had the courage or the ability to push for a real investigation using foreign diplomatic channels.
They had to neutralize him.
And second, it was about dismantling the entire support structure around Oh Soo-mi.
With Shin Sang-ok in the U.S. and now her partner exiled.
She was left utterly isolated and defenseless. The ANSP systematically shattered the family's ability to coordinate, to press the police, or to seek any external help.
The deportation is the strongest evidence that the state had a direct and active interest in permanently closing the Yoon Young-sil case.
It is. But there remains the darkest and most persistent rumor in Seoul's high society circles.
One that ties the disappearance not to geopolitical paranoia, but to the intimate corruption of absolute power.
The powerful figure conspiracy.
This narrative, though it's anecdotal, is highly compelling because it fits the context of the Fifth Republic's unchecked power so well.
The rumor suggests Yoon was involved with or was pursued by a 𝐏𝐻𝐃, a powerful figure within the ruling elite.
And we should note, rumors often circulated, sometimes naming relatives of Chun Do-won, like his brother Jang Yong-won, but we have to stress there is no hard documented evidence to substantiate those specific names.
That is absolutely correct. However, the motive of the conspiracy is rooted in the reality of dictatorship. If Yoon, the glamorous celebrity, became an intolerable liability to this 𝐏𝐻𝐃,
Maybe she was pregnant or threatened to expose something.
or was simply being spurned and posed a public embarrassment, the state machinery would be instantly mobilized.
In a dictatorship, inconvenience is often resolved with lethal finality.
And using the very same apparatus that runs the brothers' home. The ANSP's primary function was protecting the regime and its elite.
So if the disappearance was a state-sanctioned cleanup to protect a powerful man's reputation,
Then the swift, silent extraction from her Apgujeong apartment and the subsequent media blackout are perfectly explained. The ANSP would deploy the resources to make her vanish as cleanly as they exiled Kim Jong-man,
It's the classic tragic parallel we see throughout history.
the star who gets too close to the sun of power. It's why historical analysts frequently compare this case to the dark circumstances around the death of Marilyn Monroe.
A figure whose celebrity intersects dangerously with the highest levels of political authority.
And when the two conflict, the state apparatus is deployed not to solve a crime, but to eliminate the evidence, control the narrative, and enforce the silence required to protect power.
And the absolute media silence in 1986, mandated by Bodo-ji Kim, confirms that the order to suppress the story came from the one entity that could command the entire press.
The very top of the regime.
Let's just revisit the sheer normalization of state violence under the Fifth Republic. Even if Yoon wasn't a vagrant, the mechanism for her removal was already polished and ready to use.
The existence of Interior Ministry Order Number 410 and the operations of the brothers' home meant that the police were fundamentally accustomed to classifying human beings as things to be swept away.
The psychological barrier to removing a person extrajudicially had been demolished years earlier.
So for a high-level ANSP operative, executing the removal of a celebrity who is deemed a national security liability, either politically or personally to the elite, was just a high-stakes version of an established administrative procedure.
Okay, we have 4 possible scenarios here, ranging from tragic personal choice to brutal state extraction. We need to synthesize the evidence and determine a hierarchy of probability.
We can rank these theories rigorously based on how well they align with the verified facts: the locked room evidence, the media blackout, and the deportation of Kim Jong-man.
Let's start with the scenario the evidence most strongly supports.
Number 1, state-sanctioned elimination and cover-up. We have to rank this as high probability.
The evidence is just overwhelming.
It is. The ANSP's documented extrajudicial deportation of Kim Jong-man proves the state's motive and willingness to silence the family. The government-mandated media blackout confirms active suppression from the very top.
And forensically, the locked room scenario, no body, intact passport, is only plausible under the condition of a professional, organized extraction and concealment operation.
Right. This scenario, whether eliminating a political liability or covering up a secret involving a geomole, is the only one that synthesizes all the known facts.
Next, the official narrative.
Number 2, suicide. We'd rank this as medium-low probability.
The only evidence supporting it is the motive.
The verifiable emotional distress from the Billy fraud and the police's convenient official conclusion. But the flaws are fundamental.
The absence of a body for 40 years.
It's statistically incompatible with suicides in that geographic region and time period. And leaving behind all resources suggests a lack of planning, inconsistent with a desperate, impulsive act.
What about the dramatic Cold War narrative?
Number 3, North Korean abduction. We have to rank this as low probability.
The timing is suspicious, but that's about it.
While the family link to Shin Sang-ok makes it suspicious, the theory fails the utility test. Kim Jong-il, who is obsessed with propaganda, never used Yoon. No defectors have reported her presence. No intelligence has ever placed her in the north.
If she was taken, she was not used.
Which significantly reduces the probability compared to a scenario rooted in a domestic state interest.
And finally, the hope that she simply started a new life.
Number 4, voluntary disappearance. This has to be ranked as very low probability. This requires you to accept that a famous, recognizable woman left her passport and money behind and managed to sustain an anonymous life abroad for decades.
Based only on anecdotal rumors, like a supposed sighting in Hong Kong.
It just flies in the face of all the forensic evidence.
The overriding conclusion is a profound tragedy fueled by political violence. But the tragedy didn't end with Yoon Young-sil's vanishing. It continued to devastate the sister she left behind.
The catastrophic psychological toll on Oh Soo-mi is one of the most heartbreaking parts of this story. Her life was just defined by geopolitical terror.
She endured the initial trauma of Shin Sang-ok's abduction, raising their children under the South Korean spotlight.
And then, in the span of just 2 months in 1986, she lost her younger sister, Yoon Young-sil, followed immediately by the extrajudicial exile of her partner, Kim Jong-man.
The state actively, administratively, and ruthlessly dismantled her support system.
It left her completely vulnerable and alone. The Fifth Republic successfully silenced her by eliminating everyone around her.
She ultimately fled Korea entirely. She moved to Hawaii, seeking refuge from the shadows and the paranoia.
But even there, the tragedy followed her.
Sadly, yes. On June 30th, 1992, Oh Sumi was killed in a traffic accident on Maui.
It's a profoundly tragic irony. She survived the immediate political terror of 1980s Seoul, only to die years later without ever learning the truth about what happened to her sister.
The family unit was ultimately destroyed by the cascading effects of state paranoia and geopolitical proximity.
It was. And the ultimate injustice is the legal silence that prevails today.
The statute of limitations for this case has long since expired.
So even if a perpetrator, an intelligence agent, or a powerful figure were identified tomorrow, legal justice is impossible.
The political environment of the Fifth Republic ensured that the truth was so deeply buried that it would outlast the ability of the courts to prosecute.
It did.
So what does this all mean?
This deep dive really confirms that the disappearance of Yoon Young-sil is a historical indictment of the Chun Doo-won regime. She did not simply succumb to depression.
The evidence overwhelmingly suggests she was professionally removed.
Most likely by agents of her own government who were protecting a vital domestic secret, either related to the ruling elite or a sensitive spy operation connected to the Vienna defection.
So her locked room wasn't confined to her apartment in Apgujeong.
No, the entire nation of South Korea in 1986 operated as a sealed vessel, a place where the truth was aggressively contained, controlled, and ultimately suffocated by the apparatus of the ANSP and the press restrictions of Bodo Chichim.
And Yoon Young-sil, the beautiful modern star, was simply an inconvenient data point that a totalitarian state chose to delete.
She remains a beautiful and tragic symbol of an era where silence was not just imposed, but was the ultimate law.
And this leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. The records detailing the ANSP's actions, the internal directives, the full file on the forced exile of Kim Jong-man, and the decision to close Yoon Young-sil's case, these archives that would definitively explain the truth, have likely been suppressed or purged during the transition to democracy. Until the records of the ANSP are fully opened and the ghosts of the Fifth Republic are compelled to speak, Yoon Young-sil will remain a phantom. What other stories, what other lives, deleted by that state apparatus, remain hidden in those unopened archives, waiting for their own deep dive?